thank you for staying with us, everyone. Just like I hinted at the top of the program this morning, we're going to be looking at certain salient issues, including issues around climate action. We'll talk about zero hunger and a couple of some very key elements around the sustainable development goals. I should say I'm joined by the founder of Uthman, Ahmad Purelife Foundation, here to help us make sense of all of these conversation this morning. I'd like to say a big thank you to you, by the way, Ahmad, Uthman, Mohammed, for coming to share with us this morning on the program. I'd like us to kickstart this conversation from the climate action standpoint, because that is one thing that I think most people still cannot wrap their heads around, because yes, they may understand that the seasons have changed. That's the much they probably know. But walk us through the reason or the basis for this conversation around climate action.
Thank you so much for having me. Our foundation, as you have said, we're tackling a lot of SDGs, but we're focused on the 4 for now. Climate action, it's a sensitive topic all over the world. Right. You still have people in denial of the effects. But every day we see these things. We see the unprecedented 2023 that's driven the point. We have seen unprecedented heat waves. Sub-Saharan Africa, you have crisis everywhere because of food shortages and many more. So every day we keep on seeing this negative effects of climate change. And unless we start making efforts to tackle them, then we'll seriously have problems on our hand. Yes.
Does it look like Nigeria is following this conversation at all? I mean, in practical ways, because we don't seem to be, throwing our hat in the ring, making the investments and driving that conversation pretty much.
You know, I wrote an article a few months ago where I said Nigeria is part of those countries in Africa that think climate action is expensive. A lot of them feel, when you bring up the topic climate action, they feel that you're trying to stop them from developing. A lot of even developed countries have this problem. For them, they're not willing to invest in climate action. But most developing countries, it's either they're unwilling to invest or they're unable to invest. So Nigeria is part of those countries that are not doing much to tackle climate action.
The other time, at COP28, for example,
yes,
we saw how the Global West had made some very pronouncements as to what kind of investment, what amount or size of investments it would make with regards to climate action. The U.S. in particular, and some persons have said, look, it's been the same cycle every other time, year after year. How does that impact the efforts towards climate action?
Well, it's not about saying that you have allocated this sum of money every COP, because if they were taking action, serious actions, right, from so many years ago, we would have seen progress. But every year they meet up, they say they have allocated so much money for it, and we haven't seen any progress. But I think the international community should look at Africa as a partner, because Africa can either be a partner to tackling this or be a menace. So far, Africa emits the lowest, which is about 4%. Right. But if Africa should continue the way we are, not adapting to climate positive growth, which is investing in the climate action, and maybe developing as fast as the Western world is, Africa will now be emitting, instead of about 4%, will be about 75%, which means Africa will emit about 9.4 gigatons.
That's right,
per year, which is a gigaton is about a billion metric ton. So it's going to be a really big problem.
I can imagine. Every time we talk about the global West, we talk about industrialized nations. Being the ones to lead, as it were, from the front with regards to climate action. We're looking at the US, we're looking at Canada, we're looking at Germany, we're looking at China. When you turn to the East, for example, Asia. How much have they brought to the table so far?
Well, I think, in my opinion, I would say Europe have done the best with the Paris Agreement, with the Green Deal. I recently attended the EU Investment Summit in Brussels. It was really interesting. We got to learn a lot, and we have seen that they made an action plan. And when they make this action plan, they try to, it's like when I achieve this, then I tick it off the box. This is what they're trying to do. So the EU is doing a lot, and also the US and other countries are doing that. But when it comes to looking at partners like Africa, I feel they're taking it slow. And which I feel if you forget Africa, then Africa will either, just like I've said, would either be a partner in tackling it or will be a menace for the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Donald Trump had railed against the idea of climate change over time, which largely pitted him against former Vice President of the U.S., Al Gore, and also pitted him against former Governor of California, because these are guys who believe climate change should be tackled like yesterday morning. But again, apparently these gentlemen were on different sides of the divide. How did Donald Trump's rhetorics about climate change impact the conversation?
Well, you know, just like I've said, a lot of people are in denial. A lot of people do not believe in climate change. And, well, if science is to be believed, if we do not meet the net zero by 2050, then we lose, I would say, it will be unlivable to live on Earth. Yes. So Donald Trump, and you know, this thing is something that is very sensitive, like I've said. You have people, just like other topics, you have people not believing in certain things or certain beliefs. Or
for whatever reasons.
For whatever reason. It could be a reason. There are people that don't believe in, how would I say it, even the government. I know someone that I studied with. She doesn't believe in any authority, any form of authority, whether it is government, whether it's anything. So she believes that you can't even arrest her because she doesn't believe in your law or anything. So Donald Trump is one of them, and you have many of them. Yes.
That sounds like he's the renegade in the narrative about climate change. Let's talk about corporate entities, IOCs in this case in particular. I mean, Nigeria is apparently a country that not only produces oil, but it depends on monies from sale of crude, all right, to finance its budgets. I mean, to about 95% of it every other budgetary cycle. What should be the role, ideally, of international oil companies across the world, starting from Nigeria?
Well, Nigeria, I think they should reduce the emission, invest heavily in renewable energy, try to find ways around it. And, you know, Nigeria is one of the top emitters of methane. Methane is considered more lethal than CO2.
Right.
So these are things that we should focus on and try to reduce them. So instead of us, because that's why I mentioned climate positive growth. Climate positive growth in the sense that you can make use of climate action to invest and also get your money back. Try renewable energy, for example. Try other means, for example. Introduce other things. Because if you look at it, apart from destroying land, for example, in the southwest, southeast, and the south-south, we also have polluted like air around it, people getting sick and all that. So private companies, the government, they need to do a lot to try to tackle this issue and try to make the people living there live better.
A few years ago, Britain did say that by 2040, most of the cars on this road, maybe more than 80% of them, would have gone green, whatever that means, right? Do we have other countries following suit? Let's even say in Africa, for example, are we thinking in that direction? Are we projecting, even if it means in 50 years, for example?
Well, I think I've seen, so far, most countries in Africa I've seen is introducing electric motorcycles, but not cars yet. But
that's a good place to start from.
That's a good place to actually start from. Nigeria, I haven't seen that, but I've seen Kenya. Kenya, they have now introduced a lot of motorcycles that are power electricity. Even their president commissioned some few months ago.
Right.
So for Europe, I think it's possible because you have countries like Luxembourg, even the buses are electric. You have even Austria, parts of it are electric. And I think by 2030, I was listening to the Minister of Climate Action and Environment. She plans on even making all of it electric.
That's in Austria?
Yes. So for Europe, I think it's possible to make all of it electric.
Interesting. You know, we can have this conversation and not pay, not have some bias towards renewable energy. We talk about that a lot here. Former Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo himself, a man who understands the dynamics around this conversation,
Yeah.
had also tried as much as he could to advance, efforts in this direction. Are we working hard enough to pursue renewable energy? Because we get to hear about how that we should explore other sources of energy beyond what we have at the moment and stuff like that. Are we ready for that conversation as a country?
Well, I think we are not ready for the conversation, even though we have made significant improvement from like 10 years ago. Now, 10 years ago, you wouldn't even see any solar panel anywhere. But now you would at least you see them in houses, you try to see them in schools. I'm trying to work on a project now which would have solar electricity for schools in the south, in the northwest, at least, which will power clinics, even though it's going to be just tier 1 energy, which means just probably light bulbs, right. But at least it's something. And we're trying to just tap from the sun, which we are just wasting, because in the south there's about 40, 45 degrees, which is really hot. But instead of us making use of it, we just let it be. But we need to make use of it, renewable energy.
Right. I mean, talking about the climate, I mean, the environment, still, your foundation is putting in a lot of efforts into tree planting. How's that coming?
Yes, we recently, I recently traveled to Daura in Katsina State because we plan on kickstarting the project in Katsina State, the hometown of the former president. Right. In Nigeria, the whole of 2024, we plan on planting 3,000 trees. But we'll kickstart our project in Daura, I think, at the first week of May or so. So what we are trying to do is, apart from planting the trees, we're trying to get a lot of young people on board to let them know about climate change. Because whether we like it or not, the young people, the young generation, are the ones that will live with the consequences of the actions or the inactions. So apart from planting, we're also educating. We're going to universities. We're now creating clubs, environmental clubs, climate action clubs in secondary schools and also universities.
That's great. Yes. Let's just do a switch quickly. Let's look at the fourth goal of the SDGs. I mean, your foundation focuses on that too, quality education, right?
Yes.
The world is now talking globally about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yes.
Right. Has Nigeria be able to raise its game? Because we're still dealing with the fundamentals in this country with regards to education, whether it's policy formulation or even structures and so on and so forth. And we have seen the influx, all right, from public school system into the private school space. Of course, that's in itself is an evident message of where we are in terms of education. What's your foundation doing along those lines?
Well, we just started. Previously, I was the one writing all the plans and our action plans and all that. But we recently have a director, a program director for SDGs 4, who is apparently an expert in education and also a medical doctor. So she came up with this plans for us to introduce trainings not just for teachers, but we also have like leadership trainings for students as well. Would also, because one of the problems we have in schools is that a child will go to school probably being confused about what he wants to study or not. But we need to tell them, we need to teach them. It's not just about saying, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a scientist. What do engineers do? What do medical doctors do? What is what do they do on this line and all that? So these are things that we want to also, we'll be going to secondary schools, we'll be going to schools, we'll be teaching them this, and we'll be telling them that, okay, if you want, what do you want to become? You want to become a doctor? Okay, this is what a doctor is. This is what they do. This is what you're going to be doing and all that. So this is also part of things we want to do. But we're also focused for now, we'll be focused on renovating schools, actually, renovating classrooms, providing seats, giving them school bags. We already started that in my hometown, Adamawa. We're giving out school bags because a lot of kids, you might be surprised to know that a lot of kids do not even have school bags. They go to school with probably their books in their hand. Some do not even cannot get notebooks. So in the bag, we will have a water bottle where you could get your water. You have your notebooks, you have your pencils, you have a math set, and just
The basics.
just the basics. So for now, this is actually what we are focused on, and this is what we plan to do for the rest of the year: renovate classrooms and give them desks, and try to just make it
Bit of a
conducive.
modest environment.
Yes, just try to make it that. But I think from next year we'll be focused more on the policies and many more.
Oh, great. So
Yes.
now that you mentioned Adamawa, it brings to mind the Northeast,
Yes.
especially given the level of damage that has been done to that
Yes.
region of the country
Yes.
by terrorism and bandits and all of that.
Yes.
Of course, that has even made it. It has taken the child further from the classroom now, right? So it means there's a whole lot of work to be done in that area. Apparently, when we look at the whole system, on what level should government and the private sector, including foundations like yours, for example, come together to find collaboration? Because we don't seem to be seeing much of that right now, are we?
We need to make an action plan. We need to give a time frame of what we want to achieve and when we want to achieve it.
Right.
I think that's the only way we can tackle this. But without an action plan, without giving a time, because if you talk about this today and say that, okay, these are things we want to achieve, you don't have a time frame. You could be thinking maybe the next 10 years, 20 years or 30 years. Or if you put an action plan and give a time frame of, okay, I want to achieve this between this year and probably next year, then you tick your boxes. If I've achieved this, then you tick it, and then that's when we're going to be serious.
Interesting. We understand that there have been several internationals who come into this country and they want to sort of make impact, right? Bringing funding, bringing technical support, structures in some cases and all of that, whether it's in education or in action, climate action like we have said a while ago, but they don't seem to find a structure good enough to do that. But let's use that as a basis to talk about data, because you can have this conversation altogether without bringing in the element of data. How much are we using data to drive this conversation about development around education?
Well, I think we don't use that, and we don't even go out there to of school children, but that number is about 10, 20 years ago. It's not even the current number. So we use data that are outdated. We don't even go out there to even reach. We don't go to the source.
Right.
Someone sits in Abuja, for example, and just types on the internet and probably finds something that's from like years back, and he just talks about it. So we need to actually go down there. We need to meet these people. We need to do our survey. We need to ask them. We need to like look at it and also give correct data so that we'll be able to move forward. But if we keep on giving wrong data, we'll not be able to achieve what we plan to do.
All right, maybe we'll leave it there for education and talk about clean water and sanitation as well, right? World Water Day is just 1 weeks away, and then in the meantime, we're still talking about the need to fight off open defecation, sanitary issues, and so on and so forth. I'm sure your foundation is very passionate about this.
Yes. Clean water is something that is really close to my heart, because if you look at the Northeast, you have kids. I have traveled back to my hometown. It's a small village outside of Yola. I met this little girl who tells me she has to walk for some kilometers every morning to go and fetch water. So, and you know, as for the girl child, she has to go fetch water even for the older brothers, for them to bathe in the morning before going to school and for them to cook. So just imagine what a young girl has to go through. This is really something that I plan on tackling a lot, but it's not just us as a foundation. This is something that the governments, NGOs, international organizations have to come in, because in Nigeria it's something a lot of people do not have access to clean water. A lot of people do not have access to even, how would I say it? I'm telling you, there are people that are even looking for dirty water and they can't find it, because especially you have places in Nigeria where their wells are even dried up. Because of drought or something, the lake is even dried up.
Again, that takes us back to the issue of climate.
That even takes us back to the issue of climate change. Cows. The reason why you have people migrating with cows destroying people's farms is because they are going around looking for water. Even the cows do not have water. So this is really terrible.
Interesting. I think we're going to leave this talking about zero hunger. Right? Nigeria, by way of coincidence now, is dealing a lot with food crisis. The president has just said customs should release food seized back to the owners. We're waiting to see that happen because it was just over this weekend that directive was given to the customs authorities. Let's talk about the place of, how hunger has become an issue around the world in general and in Nigeria in particular.
Well, it's really terrible because you look at, it's not just Nigeria, it's everywhere in the world. It has to do with, I think, failure of governments to invest properly and also incentives. You have people abandoning farms. You have people with a lot of farms now abandoning their farmlands. Why? Because there is no incentive, there is no motivation to actually go to the farm. You even go there, you plant and do everything. You're scared because of the insecurity.
That's right.
It's either you're scared of even the insecurity or when you finish planting, to transport your food from the village or the rural areas back to the city is a problem now for you again because of the high cost of transportation. So these are, if we address, they go like hand in hand. You must address one to make relief for the other one. So these are things, they all build up and we are now having, it's not just this thing, even the World Food Program is saying that they can't even get food from Nigeria again. So they have ruled out Nigeria as part of the countries they're even going to buy food. If they want to get food, to probably donate to other countries or so. And also, we are not doing a lot in terms of actually making good use of our land in Nigeria. You have enormous land, bigger than most countries, but we're just cultivating about what? Just a few percentage. So it's really terrible.
Yes, it is. But there are people who have said that, look, this issue about zero hunger by 2030 is not realistic because they say, look at the ravaging hunger across the world, Africa alone, for example. So they say it's not realistic. If it's not realistic, so why are we even having this conversation? Why are we making the effort?
I spoke at the event and I was talking about the SDGs, the 17 goals. The first question a young boy asked me was, is it possible? And he said I should answer him truthfully. I said, okay, well, truthfully, I don't think we can meet these goals by 2030.
Right.
Because if you're talking about these goals by 2030, that means no person will be hungry in the whole world. Every person will be educated, SDGs 4. We're going to have climate change. That means we're going to get to net zero by 2030. We're going to have, everybody will have access to water. Everybody will have access to equal rights, equal pay, energy. So how is that possible? So what we need to try, just try our best, even if we don't get to the whole 17, at least let's try and get some of it. So, yes.
Great. So your foundation is pretty young,
Yes.
I understand, right?
Yes.
And you have several other foundations that are doing similar work across board. Focusing on either all of the goals or a handful of the goals and all of that. I don't want to think of it in terms of competition because it's not supposed to be business. It's supposed to be non-profit. But I do know foundations get grants every now and then, right? So how does your foundation intend to get ahead? Because you're not into buying and selling, apparently.
Yes. So far we have reached out to a lot of people. We are also meeting a lot of people.
Right.
International organizations like the UNDP, the EU Commission. I was recently in Brussels to introduce our foundation to the EU Commission. And a lot of NGOs we are reaching out to them for not just collaboration, for partnership, and also for grants and for funds. We have actually started receiving some. And we would also be receiving some because most of them, you have to actually convince them. A lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations are scared because over the years there are organizations and NGOs that have been given grants, and they would use that to probably build a house, buy a car, or
marry more wives,
or something like that. So they have to actually do a background check. They have to see that you are really serious about it. Sometimes you have to even give you have to get recommendations letter from either a minister of your foreign affairs, a few ambassadors or something, just to show that you're someone that is serious, you're someone that you're serious to do business, and you're someone that is trying to help, not actually try to enrich yourself and all that.
Very recently, you met with immediate past president Muhammadu Buhari. You also met with the Emir of Bichi.
Emir of Daura.
The Daura, I should say,
Yes.
yes. You met also with the governor. I can't remember, but I know you did meet with former President Buhari.
Yes.
Talk to me about what the conversation was like in light of your foundation and the work your foundation is doing.
Well, you know, President Buhari is someone that is passionate about farming. He's passionate about agriculture. He's passionate.
Yeah, he has never hidden it.
Yes, he's never hidden it. He's a Fulani man like me. So he loves trees and all that. So when I went to him, I told him that the reason we are starting our project in Daura is because of my love for him.
Right.
So that's why I'm not even starting it in my hometown of Adamawa. We're going to Daura to kickstart the project. And I told him that I would want him to please join us for the kickstart. I told him this is my plan. I introduced the foundation. I gave him a brochure to go through it and all that. He was impressed by it, and he has assured me that he will be joining us. The same with the Emir of Daura, who will be joining us in early May for us to kickstart the project in Daura.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
I want to talk about, I mean, the first time I had an interface with you, of course, off camera, I mean, you did talk about tree planting, and I found it fascinating.
Yes.
But then I'm wondering, how do we teach young people to imbibe the culture of planting trees? And not only planting trees, but paying attention to trees that have already been planted, making sure that they're protected and they keep them growing rather than destroy them or watch someone else destroy them. How do we imbibe that culture?
Well, you need to teach them how the importance of having trees. You need to teach them. There's a community in Kenya. What they do is, for every child that plants a tree, they'll give them trees. And if you plant a tree, you go to like your community leader or something. There's like a program director in the village. You show them that, okay, this is a tree that I've planted. You probably give them, let's say, maybe a 500 or 1,000 naira per tree that they have planted and how they have taken care of it. So by the end of the year, you come back to the community and you probably just give them awards or something like that. These are things that really, for a child, for a grown-up, you would not mind. Like, you wouldn't really pay attention to that. But for a child, it matters a lot. It matters a lot. And they have recorded about 90% improvement in that village in Kenya. So this is also something that we will try to do. But for the most important thing is to teach them the importance of planting trees and the benefits of planting trees. That's why we're not only planting trees for shade, we're also planting trees that have fruits and all that. So at least they can have some of the fruits and they know the importance of that.
What can be done? Because, I mean, I can't just take my eye off the sixth goal in the SDGs, all right, which, of course, talks about clean water and sanitation. In the middle, it's open defecation that's one of the highlights across the world, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. What must be done? What are some things that must be done, all right, to be able to tackle open defecation?
Well, I think you need to have stricter laws. But before the laws, you actually have to have, there are a lot of people that do not even have where to sleep, talk more of a bathroom.
Right.
So also, you can introduce public toilets. You have public toilets in Austria, for example. These
functional ones.
Functional ones. These public toilets are run by private individuals. They are not the government owned. Run by public individuals. You pay your money whenever you come to it's like a gate. You put in your 50 cents and you go in. So all money realized from that is being used to pay the cleaners, to fix something that, so we could also introduce that in Nigeria. For a certain fee, you could have that also. But also some people would argue that how many people would even have food to eat, talk more of having money to go to the toilet. So for us, I think it also has to do with also some policy issues and all that. But I feel we will get there, even though we'll get there slowly, but we will get there. So we need to introduce stricter laws and try to make ways, because you can't make laws if you haven't provided a solution. So we'll try to also make this kind of solution by introducing public toilets and all that. But even if we can't do the ones for like that paid or something, we could try to, like, for the sake of not having diseases everywhere and all that, we could like try to have some that are probably free and just probably take care of them. It wouldn't cost us much to have a public toilet that is being paid. you pay the cleaner, you pay the, you fix it and all that, at least for our health.
I'd like to say a big thank you to you,
Thank you
Ahmad
so much.
Uthman Muhammad,
Yes,
founder of Ahmad Uthman Purelife Foundation, for coming to share with us
Thank you so much for having me.
this morning. That's what